Welcome back, guys. My Life in Letters. And on today's episode, we got the chance to chop it up with just one of the coolest, innovative, interesting cats that we've had on the show, Gusto, or Gusto. I think both are acceptable from Four Burners crew, TFP. 2 weeks ago, you got to hear a snippet of this larger interview where we focused on mentorship. And Gusto talks a lot about the people that he just by chance just happened to be around. And if you are in the community, you already know when you hear these names like Sen2 and Faust, who are held in such high regard, that we understand more about the graffiti privilege of Gusto. Not to mention that he was put down in TFP by the one and only case too. So it was really special to be able to hear about how many friends and guides Gusto had in his graffiti career. And you know, as I just keep bringing it up because I think we are lacking leaders. And so when you have a mentor, you have somebody that can show you the way on whatever level. It doesn't just have to be about graph. Those people need to be celebrated. Those men and women are critical. While mentorship was the focus of episode 3, in today's episode, we hear about Gusto's immigrant story and what it took for him to feel comfortable assimilating in New York City as a kid. We hear about computer hacking, which was a part of his adolescence. We get to learn more about his thought process as a teenager and when he was in high school in New York City. And that's when we get introduced to all of the people that Gusto had the fortune to be around. And then, of course, we get to dig deeper on what's happening right now and what he's got cooking in the future. So I've said enough. Let's get going on this episode. I hope you guys enjoy it. Well, I don't have an intro. I don't have a thing that I'm going to be saying for season 2, but here we go. And thanks for carving out the time to be here with us, man. Appreciate it.
No, of course, man. It's an honor.
Truly. I feel like you have, like for me, like I've been looking at your stuff for a long time. You have this iconic hand style that like I just like, I don't know, like I'm really like drawn to it. You've been doing a whole lot of new interesting work. You're putting out these posters lately that I hope we can get to. But you've been doing a lot of interesting work lately that I hope we can touch on. But you had told me before we started recording that you have an interesting story as to how you first started doing graffiti. Do you wanna?
Yeah. So funny enough, Angelina Jolie, actress.
Okay, this is a good start already.
She got me into graffiti basically, which is funny enough. So personally, I don't know her, but I started more or less because of the movie Hackers. So before graffiti, when I was about like 11 years old, 10 years old, I got my first computer, old school Compaq. And I got really into computers and the whole tech space when Windows was like still 3.1 and MS-DOS was the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And then in 95, the movie Hackers dropped. And I was like, I got to see this movie. It's about computers. I love computers. And then, I saw the graphics, within the movie. And it was like the graffiti in the backgrounds and the dripping graphics and the loud colors. Yeah. And I was like, and obviously Angelina being like super hot chick in the movie, being the little rebel. I think at some point, like she caught a tag or something or put up a sticker. Hack the planet. And I was like, yo, what's that about? Yeah. So kind of like to be in that journey, more towards the hacking end. So like in my early teens, I got really into computer hacking and software development. By like 12 or 13, I was, developing software, which is crazy at that age. Yeah. Which kind of like led me to kind of like what I do nowadays. Went to college for computer engineering, ended up dropping out. Went to high school for art, and then eventually all the worlds collided. And now I kind of like do that for a living, a mix of technology, a mix of art, a mix of, just cultural direction.
Angelina Jolie. I'm sure she's liacting right now. So, shout out to her. Yeah.
Shout out. Thank you.
That's hilarious, though. That's hilarious. And so then but what, I'm curious then if hacking was what was the interest? I mean, what was the draw into that? Were you being rebellious? Were you?
Yeah. So basically I grew up, on food stamps. Mm-hmm. So I grew up super poor. And from watching, that movie, these dudes were like in their crib, quote unquote hacking. and, making bank. And I was like, holy shit, like, what's that about? So, doing some homework, I learned how to, make Trojans, and, I don't want to get into the details, but, by age 12, 13, I was literally committing grand larceny,
Wow.
I was like taking people's credit card information, buying shit and flipping it on eBay.
Whoa.
Laptops at the time for like $3,000, $4,000. At 13, that's like insane.
Dang.
So,
I'm actually interested in like knowing, like, at the time, were there a lot of resources online for you to learn how to do this, or?
Funny enough, like back then there was way too many, and it was super easy to do, just because cybersecurity isn't what it is now.
Yeah.
There was no McAfee's back then, nothing like that. And the way the internet worked back then, like AOL would connect you directly to people. So through an IM, you can literally, get people's IPs and literally, go into the systems very easily.
Yeah.
Or through, thankfully, like, AOL and people's, ignorance, I could create like a fake web page and ask for people to verify their information to make sure their account worked. And then they'd, easily put in, all their credit card information, passwords, and just literally email me all the information. And I had to go to the local library, buy a couple laptops, get them shipped to a local crack house, and just go pick them up.
Wow.
So that was kind of like my early teens, yeah.
Yo, we in San Francisco, we would say that was federal. We'd be like, damn, that's federal, or that's federal.
Well, that's kind of like why. And once I got into high school, I kind of like stopped doing that shit, because I was like, yo, that's like some serious fucking time.
No doubt. Okay, so that, then I'm curious too, because you told me it was 1995-ish that you started doing some, like, your first kind of graffiti. So was it? I don't know what year Hackers came out. It seems like that was about it. 94.
Hackers 95. Was 95. Yeah.
And so you saw that, and you get. Well, it sounds like there were two things. There was like this ability to be on the computer doing some programming and hacking, but then there was also this like analog physical thing of doing graffiti. And so what was the very first stuff you were doing? Like you said, Angelina Jolie put up a sticker. Were you putting up slaps? Because I know you're like really into stickers still.
Yeah. So at the time, I saw the movie. I was super inspired to do that side of things. But then at the same time, I was still like in junior high school around that time.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a kid in my art class. Happened to be in art class because I pretty much grew up just always drawing. So I was always drawn to art. Mm-hmm. And within that art class, there was some kid who would always be like what I perceived as catching tags, rocking like people's names and drawing like a halo and the little angel wings and like cool little like putting drips on shit. Mm-hmm. And I'd be like, yo, dude, like, what's that about? He's like, yo, bro, this is graffiti, man. So like that kind of like opened up my, my eyes to what that was. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, can you show me how to do shit? And he's like, nah, man, you're not down with this shit. And I was like, wait, what? Yeah. So like through that, it kind of like made me more interested in what the hell like that shit was about. Mm-hmm. Eventually, me and him became friends, and he kind of like taught me how to like catch a tag. So from the movie, like my first tag I think was Hazard, Hazard. The H flipping into the A with the crossbar I was the coolest fucking thing ever. Just because within the movie they had names like like Acid Burn and Crash and all these fucking cool all these fucking cool names. So I'm like, yo, Hazard with the radioactive sign would be fucking cool. That'd be so badass to do. So that's kind of like my first foray into
and you had told me before that. So you were born in New York City. You lived in Columbia, then you came back to New York City. This art class you were in junior high back here in the city, right?
Yeah, so I started going to school here in New York when I was about 7 or 8. Okay. Obviously, didn't speak any English, and my mom was like, just go to school and figure it out. So, yeah, so language barrier was tough for the first year or two until eventually, like, I learned, English and got put with the regular classes. And that was when I got into that,
Yeah, okay.
program.
Interesting. And that guy that, it sounded like he kind of mentored you early on, or at least that first he said you couldn't be down, but then he let you be down.
For about that year.
Uh-huh. And so, like, do you remember what that guy taught you? Because, mentorship, season 1, I talk about it a lot. I try to get into guys a bit about like who mentored you, if they did, because nowadays we don't really have any of those systems anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like people don't.
Which is something that I try to, which we can get into later on. Like I try to mentor the younger community, not just in graffiti, but within like my my work world.
Yeah.
Younger designers, younger art directors. I work with a lot of like interns. I've done speeches at FIT and at City College, and helping like people really get into art and how it can really change our lives. Nice. And how to use creativity to make a living.
Mm-hmm. And then, back to that guy, was he an active writer, or was he like a sketchbook kind of art school?
He was more like a sketchbook kind of dude.
Yeah.
Once in a while he like took me on a mission one day with like markers, and we caught like tags on like, street poles, and that was kind of like as bad as I was at 11.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But so he taught me like the very, at that age, the foundations of like, getting a cool name, being able to flip it a little bit different. So the H crossbar into the A, flipping the A backwards was like, oh man, that's so cool. And adding quotes or like a halo with an underline, like, little things like that. That was like so cool to see, because I didn't know what the hell that was about. It was like a foreign language that I was learning.
Mm-hmm. And, I'm curious because I was in San Francisco during this time. So I don't know how New York was, but like, were there a lot of guys and girls at your school who were doing graffiti in books, but they weren't actively bombing? Or was this guy kind of unique in that?
He was kind of like the only one, really. It wasn't until like I really got into like high school that I started paying more attention to graffiti, not only in my neighborhood, because I'm from Queens, but I went to high school in the city. Mm-hmm. So it forced me to take trains. And by being in school in the city, I went to an art school in the city, I met people from other boroughs. So it forced me to take trains to go hang out with them at their house.
Nice.
So I would take, the train here, the 6 train there, the 2 train here. And I'd see things in tunnels and on rooftops. And it kind of just blew my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I bet. I mean, and, there was still... actually, I feel like the 90s, you would know better. Like, was the city on smash when you first started, like 95, 96?
Oh, yeah, it was insane. Mm-hmm. Even like then, I wasn't as attentive to like, piecing and all that stuff, but I would see just tags everywhere and like, bubble letters and outlines. And, at the time, I wasn't able to read stuff yet because I was still so fresh. I was like a little guppy, in the pond.
Yeah.
It wasn't until like really, high school, even as a freshman, sophomore, where I met like real writers that, quote unquote, which nowadays are big names, that really learned how to read stuff. And I was like, holy shit, like I didn't know what I was looking at was an MQ or, a Derek or a Celt or a NATO, up until then.
Yeah. And, I'm interested also how the language, your own personal language development came into play, because if English was your second language and now you are attempting to do graffiti, it sounds like in English, hazard was the first word. Was there a thought about that? Were you actively avoiding writing a word in Spanish, or did you just, hazard was so close to the Hackers movie that was
that's exactly what it was. Yeah.
Had you thought about doing hazard in Spanish or doing a different language tag?
No, not at all. Like once I started living here, it was like that was like the whole Spanish thing was only like at home thing.
Yeah, sure.
So just talking to my mom in Spanish, but in the real world, quote unquote, like it was just English.
Mm-hmm. And so you're saying that like through junior high, you were just kind of poking around with it. Do you have any other names after Hazard that you want to share?
Yeah. So the one before my current name was Sketch, just because I think like at the time, a little later in my junior high school, I met a kid that used to rack a lot. So I'd go with him just to, like look out for him. And we'd go to, art stores. He'd, just steal whatever. So he'd steal like, markers and pens just to steal. He just liked stealing. And so he stole like a bunch of sketchbooks for me, and obviously on the cover it says really big Sketch. And I was like, well, that'd be a cool name to try. So like I tried doodling that name for a bit. Obviously it's more tied to art. So kind of like change from focusing on computers and hacking more into art. So I figured the name, should switch along with it.
Yeah.
So I wrote Sketch for a bit up until, high school.
And that's when you got in high school is when you came up on Gusto?
Actually, Faust gave me the name.
Who
so
did?
Me and him, Faust, Faust, Faust.
Really?
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. Like let's go back. You go to high school now. So you were at the arts classes that you were at a traditional junior high school or middle school. And then you went to an arts high school.
Then art was like 80% of what I did in high school.
Yeah. Were you studying visual art?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And at that school, were they doing? I'm just curious if you had any digital art training.
Not really. They had a Photoshop class, which like I never took.
That's pretty advanced too, because what was that, 97 that you started?
Yeah, it was like one of the earlier Photoshops, and I never got interested in it really at the time, up until some of the inklings of like my computer hacking thing. People wanted me to change their grades for their report cards.
Nice.
So I was like, I'll try doing it on the computer, and then through at the time Paint Shop Pro. Like I used that to switch people's report card grades for their parents.
Wow.
Obviously, it wasn't official. It was more for their parents.
Yeah.
So that was pretty funny.
That's hilarious. Okay, and and then you met Faust. Was Faust at your school?
Yeah. So I've known him for now like 15 plus years.
Nice. And how did it come up that you got? Well, actually, I'm interested in that meeting. How did you meet Faust, and how did you develop your friendship?
So it was pretty much, we were in a mutual art class. Throughout the years, obviously, we were in a shit ton of classes together. But I think the first one we were in, he was like sitting in the corner drawing. So I think the first class we were in, it was like Art 101 or whatever it was. And our first project was creating a cover for what was going to be like our folder to put our work in.
Okay.
So, so obviously I'm, doodling a bunch of like, random shit. I think like drawing some like anime characters. Obviously, everybody was into like Dragon Ball at the time. So I'm like drawing some like Dragon Ball shit. And he's doing some elaborate, like train looking perspective shit. And I'm like, damn, that looks fucking dope. Then he flips a tag on the bottom. And I'm like, oh, this kid fucking does graffiti. So I was like, oh, that's so cool. It's the first graffiti dude that I see in high school. So, blah, blah, blah. After a couple of weeks of like seeing his shit, we ended up like linking up, and I was still writing sketch at the time. So we ended up like, I started like doing a bunch of stickers with him. He would show me his hand style. I'd show him my shit. We were exchanging throw ups and, so forth and so forth for a while. So we became like really, really close early on.
I'm curious also if he had, did he have nice hands early on?
Oh, dude, bananas. Like at fucking age 14, he could still burn most people today.
That's fresh. That's super cool. And okay, so you meet up with, was he writing Faust at the time, or did he have another name? Interesting. Yeah. Okay, wow. So you meet this kid Faust, you're in this new school that you're saying that there's all these different kids from all over the 5 boroughs. I went to an arts high school as well, and it was just packed with writers. What was your high school like as far as graph writers was concerned?
It was crazy. Within the school, there was probably like a handful of us. Okay. So like the ones that obviously come to mind besides being Faust were Seek, who also influenced hugely like my hand style, throw up, and piecing. He was the first guy that I actually painted with. He took me to a rooftop and I did my first piece. I think at when I was like 14 or 15 maybe. He even mentioned, like, I think a year or two ago, like, yo, I still got the flick of that piece.
Nice. How is it?
It was horrible, but yeah, I think it was I think it was like a hunter green fill, black outline, really horrible highlights. But I flipped like a lowercase G, and I thought I was a shit. And it was just comparing it to, looking back, I was like, holy shit, this is so bad.
Let's actually go back to the how Faust gave you the name. Was it a natural thing, or were you guys sitting down saying, hey, sketch isn't right? How did that go down?
So it's funny because that's basically my birth name, as it is anyway.
Okay.
So we were in typography class. Funny enough, me and him took typography class together.
Is it Gustavo?
Yeah.
Aha, okay.
Yeah, so he came to class one morning, and I think he put a sticker down, and he was like, yo, bro, that should be your new name. You're writing that shit from now on. And I was like, oh, shit, that makes so much sense. He's like, yo, bro, you got the gusto, bro. That's your shit.
Nice. Yeah.
And I was like, yo, that is legit my shit. So from then on, I think from like when I was 15 or 16, that's what I started writing.
I told this story in one of the episodes where I was getting bagged in San Francisco by a bunch of cops. It was like, I don't know what year it was. It must have been 95, 96. And these cops were like, you were doing an Adam tag. And they're looking at my ID and they're like, your name is Adam. And they look at me like, you're just such a stupid person. And I was like, I don't know, man. It's just my name. Okay, so that's cool. So it makes a lot of sense too. Like if you have letters that have meaning, and this clearly did because you'd been Gustavo your whole life. That's fresh.
It just made sense.
Yeah. Also you had said earlier that when you started taking the train around, that you saw a lot of bombing, a lot of tags in tunnels and things like that. I've seen a lot of pieces from you, but not 1/10 of the amount of tags that I've seen, slaps and other tags. So hand styles clearly seem to play a pretty huge role in your work now and have been. What's the inspiration around focusing on hands as opposed to crafting out pieces and really refining throwies? Like what drives you to keep doing tags?
So I think for me, it's just like a real love for typography, stemming obviously from high school and those typography classes. But then eventually, once I got into my art career that I do for a living, typography plays such a strong role in communication that, without a clean font, a clean type, you can't get a message across. And for me and my clients and, what I do for a living, design is, the foundation of everything else when it comes to advertising. If you don't have a clean logo, if you don't have a clean font for whatever your brand's trying to say, like you're not going to get the message across of whatever you're trying to say.
Yeah. I'm curious about then at the time, your own personal brand, you Gustavo, 15, 16-year-old kid, did you have things that you wanted to communicate that maybe you couldn't or wouldn't other than translating it into graffiti?
Not really. At the time, I was just more concerned with like graffiti is such a fun thing and such a social thing, like because of it, my circle of friends grew because we were all into graph. So my thing was, if you're, from Brooklyn, I'm going to go chill in your neighborhood and put stickers up over there or catch tags over there or let's paint over here. So it was just more of the whole like ego-driven graffiti thing at the core where it's like, I want to see my name everywhere.
Yeah. So
I'd purposely, even friends that didn't write graffiti, I'd go to their neighborhoods and like they'd watch out for me as I, walked around catching tags or whatever.
Nice. Yeah. And, you mentioned that you took typography classes in high school. I'm curious if you have memories of those classes, anything sticking to this day from those classes or a lot of things sticking?
Not a lot, because it was crazy enough. Like at the time, like Faust was so advanced in his typography and the way he wrote letters that me and him would just sit like on the side and just kind of like do our own thing. And like our teacher would walk by and see like the shit that he was doing and we were doing, just kind of like more or less leave us alone. So it was like we were like in our own little world, like literally go to class just to do stickers.
Nice.
We get the old school, postal 228 labels, like the ones that were super long. So we do like panel pieces and fucking elaborate, calligraphy style.
What do people call those? Blue tops? I think sticker junkies
those
call them.
blue tops.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Nice. So you would just go in.
So we would go grab a fucking fat stack and just literally go to class and do those, and then after school, we'd go just walk down Broadway from our high school, 20, 30, 40 blocks putting up stickers, then go down to, Canal, and go by Scrapyard, bomb the system, and walk around that neighborhood just putting up stickers. So that was kind of like my high school.
I'm curious, and I think sticker junkies would want to know, like when you were first doing those blue tops or 228s, whatever you had, what kind of markers were you and Faust kind of really into?
I think Pilot was the first one we were using, the chisel tip Pilots.
Yeah.
But then they would fade after a bit.
Yeah.
So I think eventually we switched to Sharpie, the Sharpie chisel tips, because they lasted so much longer.
Yeah.
After rain and snow and all that.
Interesting. You still use those today?
Yeah, I'm looking at them right now.
Nice, yeah. Okay, so you had mentioned some of the other guys that were at your high school. I mean, you had mentioned Seek and Faust. Who else was around or just in your circle? You said of graph heads. They don't have to be from your school, but who was?
Yeah. So at the time, like post high school, there was always a circle like gathering point where people would go to like exchange black books and hit, do all that stuff. A lot of the people, like, I don't remember just because they weren't really writers. They just like drawing stuff. But people that really come to mind were like the old school KGK dudes, Mista I've known forever. At the time, Fees, Netter, they were like super active, back then. So like I knew those guys back then. Sino, TIS, who put me down with TIS, back then. Nerd also used to, chill there a lot.
So was it like a writer's bench of your own kind of making?
More or less, yeah, which happened to be like up the block from, if you remember Tower Records.
No.
So I would swing by to Tower Records.
Wait, where was it?
That was in Midtown.
Okay.
It was around Columbus Circle / Lincoln Center.
Okay.
So I'd go to, we'd go to Tower Records and look through all the magazines.
Yeah.
They had, the Source. So we'd go to the back and see like all the shit that, would be published. They had like magazines from like other states. So just to see like all the different, stuff people were doing. Then we go to the, what we call the Square. We'd all link up there, exchange black books, and kind of just, hang.
And so there were guys that you knew and other guys, writers that you didn't know would also come there, or was it always?
Yeah, so it was a mix. Like the dudes from around the way there. Cats like Daz AOW, Post AOW. I think even Eno at some point would come around once in a while, hit up people's black books and kind of like just disappear. And me being 15, I was like, holy shit, like that was fucking cool. Because I'd see that Post has always fucking had like the most iconic hand style, like forever. So seeing all that shit around the hood and then seeing him, hit up somebody's black book, I was like, oh shit, that's fucking Post. That dude's fucking,
dope. And so then, you had also mentioned those magazines, and for us on the West Coast, we needed all the mags. The internet was going, and we had like Art Crimes and a couple other little websites, and there was a fair amount of literature on old stuff. But to keep current, we were just like magazine junkies. Was it similar for you guys when you had the option to look at what was happening in LA or San Francisco or Chicago? Were those magazines like kind of a big deal the way they were to us?
So it was cool, but like to me personally at the time, no, just because I was like very ego New York driven.
Yeah, sure.
That I was like, I don't give a shit what they're doing in the mid coast, West Coast, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I could literally just fucking walk, down the block and see some epic shit, or take the train to my boy's house in the Bronx and see, a Wayne rooftop or a fucking set piece, or exactly.
Yeah. So we thought that too. We wondered. We were like, oh man, I bet you New Yorkers aren't like us because they can just go see it all from their fucking train tracks.
So, it wasn't until like I matured in that world that I was like more appreciative of like what's happening on the West Coast. Obviously, with MSK killing it. People like obviously Revoke and and the others.
Yeah, but was there like did you ever have a moment when you were younger where you were like, oh wow, this graph thing is really big. This is way bigger than New York and me and my friends. Like this thing is global. This is huge. Like when was it, like you had said, much later that you came to that realization?
I think it was, and I was still in high school. It was, I think, when I discovered 12 Ounce Profit. Before everybody got on it.
Yeah.
It was a very small group of really dope writers that used to be on it. People like Ouija, Joker, like they were doing like insane freights at the time.
Yeah.
So for me to see stuff like that, I was like, holy shit, like this is really, taking off,
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And it's kind of just bizarre where internet and the graffiti and the internet has gone. It's like totally.
Yeah, it's a whole different world now.
It is. I mean, it's just too confusing for me. Like I don't even. I pretty much disengage. But other than doing what I do. But so okay, that's interesting. I'm always curious to hear how writers come to terms or when they have like an understanding that graph is so huge. Because I think now it's just known. You're a new writer. You just started writing in 2017, 18. This is a huge global phenomenon. But like before the internet, it was really hard to know, I mean, most of us knew what was happening in our city and that was about it. And then, in San Francisco, we had like a really, really rich history of graph, but we still were just like, I was just pining for what was happening on the East Coast. So you're saying I can see that. I don't know you, but I can just imagine this egotistical young kid who's like, "Fuck that! I'm in New York. Like this is it. This is
the Mecca. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, but then you said a little bit later you came to realize that it's bigger. And was it? You said that was after high school that realization came in.
I think like my later years in high school. 17, 18. That's when you kind of like wake up and it's like, holy shit, there's other people matter too.
Yeah. And I mean, and I wouldn't expect you to have had some great like illuminated moment of like, wow, where is my place in this graffiti culture? But was there any moment like that where you kind of wondered?
Not really. A lot of people have that in their mind, like I'm gonna be like the biggest name, the most famous person ever.
Yeah.
And for me, it was just kind of like I like doing this with friends, and I like writing my name on shit. I like doing stickers. Eventually I got into piecing. I'm like, I love doing piecing and colors and all that shit. So I'm like, let me just do this.
Well, and I'd like to talk about that because sketch. You were writing sketch for a while, which also it kind of in tells me that you were sketching pieces and you were trying to craft letters beyond tags and throwies. And you said that it was Seek that took you up on that roof the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and you did a sketch piece up there, or were you already doing Gusto pieces?
That was like the first time. Like
you said
my name early on.
You said lowercase
with a lowercase G.
That's right. Okay. So, I'm interested in like how much time you then at that point started investing into piecing, and if you ever called yourself a piecer, or if that term didn't apply.
No, so I have like a very like hyper obsessive personality when it comes to anything that I do. So whether it was with the hacking thing back then, I taught myself how to code, program, do websites by age 12, 13. So that goes to show like how obsessive I am.
Yeah.
So when it came to graph and hand styles, like that was my focus. I'm like, I need to have a super clean hand style to be out there and prove that I have a super cool hand style from New York.
Yeah.
And then eventually when I got into piecing, I'm like, I have to get really fucking good because I'm seeing pieces from like Tats Crew and FX Crew, and I'm like, holy shit, all this shit is so fucking cool. I want to be just as good, if not better.
Yeah.
So I would be, if I wasn't sleeping or in school, even in school, I would just be drawing nonstop.
And did you have black books that were like fully colored? Were you one of those guys, or would you just do sketches?
For a while, yeah. I would do full out, cutouts from magazines as part of the background, and color schemes, and I had a million fucking markers. Yeah.
What about now? Do you still sketch pieces?
Sketch I definitely do. For a while in my quote unquote graph career, I was just doing freestyle pieces on the wall. I think like Deem really put me onto that, but it became a thing where it's like after I saw Sentu's work and he kind of like really coached me a lot and the way that I do my letters and my style, seeing the amount of work that he puts into a sketch before he goes to the wall. I was like, holy shit, this guy really, hones his craft. I want to be, I want to really take that into what I do too. So I got really into sketching, before doing any sort of like, production, obviously.
Nice. And you had said that Deem was one of the people that kind of pushed that on you or impressed that on you.
So Deem was one of the guys that I met like pretty early on in my, graph career while I was still in high school. He happened to be friends with, with Faust. And Dean kind of like more or less took me like under his wing, and he was like, yo, we're gonna fucking paint every weekend. And he really got me into the whole like piecing thing. I'm
curious, back then, how were you getting all your paint?
So funny enough, I had a lot of so it was a mix. There was I still had a lot of money from my my junior high school
right, shenanigans
with selling stuff.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't hit me too much to like spend money on good paint at least. But another guy that I linked up with early on was GR4, who was my my writing partner for a very long time.
I don't know,
especially in Queens. Yeah, he got locked up and kind of like disappeared. But he had a lot of shit on Smash in Queens at least. So me and him looked up early on, and he was a very notorious racker. So he'd be like, let's fucking go to Long Island and fucking boost 50, 60, 70 cans at a time.
Nice. Pushing carts?
Basically. Yeah.
Nice. Actually, this is the kind of thing. So can you tell us one of those stories in detail from Long Island, one of your racking stories?
I think the funniest one that I have is a rack that we did, I think on our way to Montreal. So I think it was like me, GR4, I think Stay 2, you went, and a couple of people.
Nice.
So
like a good crew.
It was, but it's hilarious how it happened. So we get to Home Depot, we set the plan. Obviously, we need a distraction because we have like I think like 2 carts.
Oh, hold on. So this is a Home Depot in Montreal, or you were in New York?
We were on our way.
Okay.
So it must have been like someplace out of the city, obviously.
But you guys were on like a road trip. You were driving a car.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
So we filled up like two shopping carts, and we're like, walking around, scoping to see if security's there. If they're not, they have security there. So we're like, shit, so what do we do? So I think I forgot who it was, but somebody was drinking like a Snapple, and they were like, "Yo, guys, I got this." So he throws a Snapple bottle high in the air, like yells, and everybody turns around and it crashes down super loud.
Nice.
So security runs to him. People are like, "Holy shit, sir, are you okay?" And right away, like GR and I think like Stay or somebody like pushes the carts all the way out. We run to the car, stuff all the shit as fast as we can, and kind of just booked it out of there.
That's hilarious. And so that was like you were racking rustos, I guess.
Yeah, and Krylons.
Yeah. When do you think that was? What year approximately?
I want to say probably 2004ish.
Oh, okay.
That's when like my crew at the time, C&D, we were like really close knit. Our first like crew trip to Montreal for Under Pressure was in 2004. Mm-hmm. So I want to say it was around like 04, 05.
And it was you said it was you, Stay GR4,
UN, I think Setter, and then like one or two other cats.
Nice.
I think Sick, and LC1.
And so then you guys pushed these carts. Security was distracted by the Snapple incident, and then so do you remember? You don't remember which of the heads it was that did the Snapple thing, but so they stayed inside playing the role that they just fell and broke their Snapple, and
then they came out a few minutes later like it's all good. Let's bounce.
Nice. Yeah. That's fresh. And then what? And then you continued your drive up to Montreal for the Under Pressure.
Just chilled for the weekend.
Nice.
Did our thing, and then came back.
And was racking like that pretty common, or would you only do it like, I don't know, like that, like a road trip with a bunch of buddies going to Canada? It's kind of a special trip. Or would
So as with Chiro being my partner, for him it was a very big thing. He's just liked boosting shit.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it was let's go steal microwaves, or
sure,
let's go to Depot and steal random shit and then return for store credit.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be mostly what we'd be doing. Or let's go to like a Lowe's and fucking steal some random bucket paint that's super expensive and either return it or keep it for buff or whatever it was.
I'm also like curious about the like lineage of racking because for us out west, well, we had to rack, but also we wanted to rack because we were taught that was part of the culture. You know, how about for you guys? I mean, clearly you just said that you had the dough, you didn't really have to rack, but you chose to, and you had guys who just like got off on it. So was there that obviously there was a knowledge that racking was a thing. Was that partially why you guys did it, because that's what was usually done?
Yeah, I think it's definitely part of the culture. It's kind of like like paying your dues, as you would say, whether it's from the racking to the bombing to whatever it is. You kind of like have to pay your dues to get to a certain, I guess, level in your quote unquote graffiti career.
Yeah.
Before it's okay to start doing like the pieces and this and that.
Yeah. Which is really interesting. Like I haven't really thought about mapping out when a person crosses the line of it just being okay. You know what I mean? Like, because also I don't know if nowadays it's the same thing. For all I know, young kids aren't racking, and I don't know. They're like privileged enough to just have their mommy's credit card and just go buy $300 worth of 94. I don't know,
No.
But
they have the backyard. We know with the wall they can just fucking practice and paint on. Snap a photo on Instagram and put a filter on.
And that's like a whole thing, of course, But like, I do wonder with the racking element. Like, it's like the one thing that always has rubbed, at least like my family, just never. They were just like, why? Like, why are you stealing your paint? Even when I think at one point my mom offered to buy me paint, and I was like, nah, I don't want your money. I wanted to rack. I was a kid. But so, and I don't know if it's even as common a part of the culture anymore. I know it is with purists, but I don't know if it's a thing. And so to hear that from you, it's really interesting. And I wonder, I just wondered if that actually, how long did you actively rack like that with friends?
I think up until I want to say 2006 or 7, because that's probably when I got my first grown-up job.
Okay.
In corporate.
Yeah.
For people that know where been following me on social for years. I was an art director for MTV for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
So during my tenure there, I was like, shit, I got to stop doing so many dumb things. I'm going to fucking lose my job.
Yeah. And I think that's what happens. Like all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait, I have things I need to protect. And so I can't be doing as many kind of, I don't know, foolish things. Not foolish, but yeah, dangerous things. Okay, so we can step back a little bit because, that trip in 2004, I'm guessing a whole lot of stuff happened before that. And so like back to early 2000s, because it sounds like maybe you graduated high school late 90s. Was it, when did you graduate?
2002.
Oh, really? How did I jump that? Okay, so you graduated 2002, and then what was the plan? I mean, you said that you went to college or you started college for computer engineering. Was that straight out of high school?
So basically, like my hopes was after high school, I'm going to be an artist, whether it's doing like comic books or the thing that every artist goes through. And my mom, being my mom, she's like, art is bullshit. You're into computers, go do a computer thing. And I was like, oh, well, I do like computers. I'm, good at, doing websites and programming and all this bullshit. So I'm like, let me, go to college for engineering. So I did the whole computer engineering thing. During my college years, I was still super active painting and, doing all my craft stuff. I was really good at what I was doing in school, but I got to a point where I was like, do I really want to do this for a living? Probably not. During my time there, I met one of my really good friends who was one of the biggest club promoters at the time, here in Queens. And just by chance, one day he was like, "Dude, you're an artist. I need a flyer for a party. My regular designer, isn't around. Can you do it?" I was like, I don't really, I haven't really fucked with Photoshop like that. I don't really design, but fuck it, I'll give it a shot. So over a weekend, I taught myself Photoshop really quick. Once again, back to the hyper obsessive personality. So I, immersed myself in, obviously from techie background, I could download all that shit for free, obviously online, installed it, taught myself over a weekend how to do it, gave him a flyer. And he was like, oh, this shit's fucking really cool. You want to be my flyer guy now? So I was like, okay, cool. So I'll do design. That became like my thing. And then I was like, holy shit, I could probably do this for a living. So long story short, I dropped out of college. My mom fucking hated me. About a year later was maybe like a year or two later was when I actually started working at MTV as a designer, even though I didn't have any real training, basically.
Well, so hold on. Let me just pull that back. So you were doing these flyer designs. You taught yourself Photoshop in a week. How... Also, you had mentioned that you were like, this was like, you were super active. I'm curious, like if you can just paint a picture a little bit for what super active looked like for you.
So besides being with Deem, literally every weekend, driving to Jersey to paint with like, Themo and his people, Connecticut, with other groups of people. We would be on the road every weekend, or I'd be in the Bronx painting with them, or we go to chill spots and, paint. Would stay in GR4. We'd be, either doing freights or doing chill spots, or whatever the case was. Then, me, GR4 and Setter would, as much as we could, go out and do like highway spots. That was like really like a thing that me and GR like love to do. Was to do like live highway spots.
Dang, and that was in the early 2000s, huh? That was pretty raw. Because I feel like after 9/11, there was like a pretty big crackdown on the freeways and everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay, but you guys were still hitting freeways.
Yeah, so I think it was like literally just fucking pull up, park really quickly, run out, do motions, just fucking keep on going.
Okay, yeah, nice, dope. And then... stickers like have always been a thing, but like they were definitely, I mean, now brands are coming up making their own stickers. Eggshells weren't around yet.
No, not at all.
I mean, I feel like I didn't see an eggshell till probably 2010 or 11 or something like that. But were you actively putting up, hello, my name is, and like Avery's and all different slaps?
Yeah, so hello, my name is, and definitely the postal ones were the two big things.
Okay.
And it wasn't up until like me and Deceive linked up closer to 2007 or 8 that we got into printed stickers.
Oh, okay, so you did that first with Smart Crew guys.
Yeah.
How'd you get introduced to Deceive, or how'd you guys meet?
So I'd known him for years, and just he never really wrote, or he did in secret, which is super weird. And then we ended up looking up like at a party, and I saw him flipping tags. I'm like, "You're fucking deceived, dude." And we ended up just fucking, he's like, "Yeah, like I don't like telling people, super secretive."
You meet Deceive, who you said you'd known for a while, but you didn't know he was Deceive.
That he was a writer. Yeah,
interesting, man. And like, and was he already putting it down? I mean, he must have been. I mean, I remember he was putting it down in 2004.
He was a beast, basically.
Yeah. And Smart Crew, do you know when they formed? Because I don't.
Unofficially, so Smart became Smart because ART Crew and SM Crew became a thing. So which was, I think, I forgot if it was definitely Korn was one of the heads of, I think, SM Crew, and then ART, I forgot who was the head, but then they ended up linking up. And then obviously Smart just was super obvious.
Yeah.
So like between Korn and Deceive became like, the front men, then obviously Marty and other people came into the fold, and it just became, a whole big phenomenon in the rap community.
Yeah,
they were killing it for a long time.
And so it's interesting, like you were friends with all those guys, but you're not in Smart Crew.
I think at one point Korn might have put me down, but I was never actively bombing with them like that for me to feel like I should be repping it like that.
Okay. Yeah.
Me and Deceive go back, decades, and even at that, I never felt comfortable enough to put it up like that.
But you did, you were hanging out with Deceive, and then you started painting with them as well. And let's see here. So I was curious when you said that you like what super active kind of looked like for you, and then you have this thing where you get offered a real job. And this is like kind of one of the things that like, I think it's interesting to hear from different writers, because hopefully all of us come across this moment where life puts something really awesome in front of you, but it does make you have to question the lifestyle you're living and how you can maybe balance or sustain the two. So for you, when this opportunity at MTV came up, I mean, I could also see how the graph could have been perfectly balanced with having a new life like this.
Yeah, and it's literally like the only reason I actually got that job, because just like by chance, a friend of a friend hooked me up with a dude that was working there, and he's like, "You should go meet this dude. You're a designer. He's a designer. Chat, network." And I'm like, fuck it, whatever. So I went to go have lunch with him one day at the MTV offices, and the creative director at the time thought I was there for an interview. And I was like, "Yeah, dude, of course." So I ended up sitting with him in his office, and he was like, "Cool, so let's pull up your portfolio, look through your work." Obviously, I didn't have a portfolio because I wasn't ready to, work there. But I was like, "Dude, just Google my name." So just Google Gusto Graffiti, and just obviously, through Flickr and through message boards and just by the nuances of web crawling, all of my shit came up.
Nice.
So he was like, "Oh, this is fucking awesome."
And I'm curious, in 2007, what would he have seen? Were you, because you hadn't done yet like the tags overlaid over images the way.
No, so I started like seriously piecing maybe in 2001, 2000. So I had a pretty substantial body of work.
Okay.
At the time, I wasn't really photographing a lot, but thankfully, there's graffiti photographers that were doing it. Yeah. People like, James and Carla Murray, who obviously, published Broken Windows and Burning New York. And they would, put stuff online. And I randomly, had stuff on Flickr, myself.
Sure, of course.
So it was more, I had pieces. So the dude saw from piecing, obviously typography skills, obviously color theory, obviously design from a layout perspective. Yep. So it's all the basics that you need for a good designer. And at the time, he was just looking for a freelance designer, and I'm like, I'm your guy. Trust me. Look at my shit.
That's awesome. And he must have he must have been a pretty cool guy to think outside the box a little bit.
Oh, dude, super cool guy. Like, if it wasn't for him, like I wouldn't have my career today.
Interesting. And so then, I'm also curious, like when you're sitting in that room, because I mean, you mentioned a lot of things. You mentioned English as a second language. Of course, you've mastered English by now. It's 2007. But still, what may not have been mastered is jargon and being able to speak the language of
knew
to an
nothing.
art director. Yeah.
Nothing,
And so
nothing.
do you remember that meeting? Because you're telling me this, like you sounded like pretty confident dude. Were you nervous? Were you worried? Were you totally easy because you weren't worried about getting a job anyway? You weren't there for an interview.
Yeah, I was super laid back, and it's always been my my core belief that you always fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
I still do that day to day.
Sure.
I go to meetings with CMOs, CEOs of like multi-billion-dollar companies, and I tell them, trust me, this is what I do. Yet I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing sometimes. Eventually I figure it out. I work with a team of people that are amazing, and we all help each other out. Blah blah blah. So at the time, I was pretty much like, yeah, of course, color theory this, and topography this, and a lot of bullshitting. And obviously, I had taught myself Photoshop. I never had any formal training. So as soon as I got the offer, I had to really fucking learn my shit. Because I remember my first project there was like designing like a motion banner. And I had never done motion before. So I had to like teach myself Flash like in a couple of hours.
Oh man, Flash.
So I was like, how do I do this shit? And like thankfully some other designer that was there kind of showed me like the basics. And I just fucking, dove in, and within, a day or two, I taught myself how to do like, Flash animations.
Wow. And so, back to that meeting when you're sitting down with this guy at MTV. So he opens it up, he opens up Google, he sees all these pieces, he's impressed because of the components that you just mentioned, layout, color theory, typography. What did he say next? Was he like, yo, so are you interested? I mean, did he offer you a job right on the spot, or did they have a second round of interviews?
No, funny enough. Like, so I remember it being December, just because I got my job first week back from like the holiday break in January. Yeah, basically, like it was like end of December. He's like, "This is really awesome stuff. Would you be interested in trying coming here as a freelance designer?" I'm like, "Dude, I would love to. Let me know whatever else you need from me. I'll make sure to get it to you." And then I got an email from him. First week in January. Come back, let's chat. Went back and talked contract, and that was it.
And so now you get a job. Was that the offices like near Times Square back then?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so that must have been huge. I mean, that must have been an amazing kind of moment of realization for you that like, you're like, oh, wow, this is some grown up shit right here.
Yeah. And it's like graffiti got me here. And it was a, like a moment where I was able to tell my mom, look, I got a grown up job in a real company.
Yeah. Well, she must have been excited.
Yeah, she was both excited and pissed because she was like, fuck, like, I want you to be an engineer. But I'm like, it's just not for me.
Yeah. And so then, I'm also interested in 2007, if that was, it sounds like it was probably a little bit ahead of the curve of your friends that you went and essentially had what is really a corporate job now. Do you remember the reactions of guys like Deem or Faust?
Everybody was super hyped for me. They're like, yo, dude, congratulations.
Nice.
Like you made it, like you broke into the corporate world, and you're about to, fuck shit up.
Yeah.
And and from then it kind of like really taught me that the only way to really, change the way corporate culture works is from, being on the inside. Yeah. And being able to affect it. So, during my tenure there, I always tried to influence things, in a positive way. When I was like designing backgrounds for shows and for stuff like that, I would always put up like, people's, throw ups and tags and, and stuff like that. Nice.
I was also thinking that like when you're sitting in a job interview that you didn't even know you were going in for it. So you're super casual. Like we put out this like vibe that I think makes people want us. Like I remember when I was an actor, every time I went into audition for a thing that I didn't really want to do because it would take me away from New York or whatever, I would always book those things. But the things I really wanted, like I think they could just smell on you that you wanted it so bad and they wouldn't give it to you. But if they smell that you're not interested, they're like, oh, you smell desperation. And then on the opposite side of that, they smell like, why isn't this guy desperate? Like this guy must be so fucking good that we better get him. And obviously that vibe paid off for you. I'm curious about like when you first got to MTV, what was the culture like there? Was it totally supportive? Like, people must have known that you had a graph background because that art director must have spread that info.
Yeah, that was super laid back. You go in with Jordans and shorts and t-shirt, hat if you want to. Very, very chill. So it was exciting to be, even during that time, like MTV was still at its height, basically, because it was like during Jersey Shore and like all those big shows were still there. So it was a really exciting time to be there, just because you were a part of culture. You know, not to downplay them now, but obviously a lot has changed there, and it's not kind of like what it used to be.
No, and I mean, I feel like MTV's probably had 4 different life cycles, because I remember. I'm older than you. I remember 1984 MTV. I didn't have it, but my neighbors did. And it was like, what the fuck? Like, it was so cool. And then it was just like so bad by the mid 90s, but it had like a resurgence, and it's done that a few times. I don't know what's happening with MTV now. How long did you work at MTV?
I was there for about 6 or 7 years.
Okay.
So I started as a freelance designer there till eventually art director. And I helped, bring to life, the VMAs and the movie awards and all their digital packaging, and designed their second screen experiences and a bunch of other stuff.
Just remember that they had Cause do some of those.
That was a really exciting year.
I bet. And so it's interesting that you can work for a company like MTV that would totally embrace the graph background that you have. I'm curious if you've had corporate experiences where that didn't pay off. Like they judged you maybe the wrong way because there was a graph quality to the work. Has that ever happened?
All the time. Like for me, being where I'm at now, I deal with a lot of as I mentioned before, big companies, CMOs, CEOs. I go into a lot of meetings with gigantic tables and 40 people sitting in there, and you can't see me, but I'm literally covered in tattoos down to my hands. So as soon as I walk in, like the bias is already there of who's this guy. I have a fucking like Vanilla Ice haircut. Lines in my hair. People are like, who the hell is this guy? Walking in here.
You got lines in the eyebrows though?
No, not the eyebrows, not yet.
Okay.
So if you go back, 5 years, that wasn't the norm. Now it's a little bit more accepted. Yeah. Just because because of people like the complexes and the Vice, kind of like publishing companies that have made that kind of culture okay in corporate. Sure. Yeah. But for me, it was like different, 5-7 years ago, walking in looking like that, and people already, had biases of who is this person? Why is he here? Yeah. But once you listen to what I have to say, depending on your brand or on what the actual meeting's about, there's a lot of insight that I had that other people just don't, because they didn't either grow up here, or they're not a minority, or they don't understand, what the culture's about. And when I say culture, I don't just mean graph culture, but just culture in general. When it comes to fashion, to sneakers, to, art, et cetera, et cetera. I have a lot of knowledge that I've built up throughout the years because of graffiti, that I've been able to network and learn that it's kind of like my responsibility now to help shape, corporate brands.
Yeah. And, you mentioned I don't know if you mentioned being a minority, but you're of Colombian descent, and I'm guessing that the majority of the people that you have come across in your corporate career have not been. They have been white people, probably white
it's
men.
95%.
Yeah, which is it's depressing, to be totally honest. Like, it's really and I'm sure there's a great argument that is shifting and it is changing, but it's still there.
It's crawling. It's a crawling shift.
Yeah. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about what it is to be a designer, a Latino designer, and what that means to you, and the challenges that is presented, or the benefits.
Yeah. So for me, in the last couple of years, now that I'm a lot older than I used to be, obviously from high school and college, I've really learned that I have a responsibility, with my background and with what I can do now for people, to really help pave a way for for the next generation, to really help break those biases. Obviously, with with the guy in charge now of America, a lot of things come to light of the way that Middle America or white people really view minorities as, coming from shithole places,
from fucking shitholes, yeah.
Exactly.
Jesus Christ, yeah.
So it's people like me that look like me, whether it's skin color, whether it's crazy hair, whether it's tattoos. I really want to break down those walls of, it doesn't matter the way you look, the way you speak, but it's really about what's in your head, what's in your mind, and what you can bring of value. Because everybody can bring value to the table. So it doesn't matter whether you have, a hand tattoo, or you're a black woman, or, you're an Asian dude. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, we're all humans and we're all people.
Yeah.
So I kind of take it on my shoulders now to walk into those meetings, whether it's, with the apples, or with the Cokes, or with the Ubers, and really like let people know that, people that look like me really can bring value to your company.
Yeah.
And this is why. And then we get into it.
And what kind of, is there pressure there? Like you're saying, taking that on your shoulders, do you feel that, is there pressure? Is it hard for you? Or are you concerned about being constantly looking like a success to sort of, I mean, the expression, like a credit to your race, like I really have a hard time with that. I don't like thinking like that, but you're leading towards that like you would like to kind of represent others like you and show that you're valuable. What's the pressure like?
Like I never really try to think about it like that. It's more of like, this is the person that I am. So I don't really put pressure on me. I don't have to pretend to be a certain way. I just am the way that I am.
Yeah.
And it comes natural for me to want to become that, that leader and that voice for people that don't have that voice. Because people, from the Bronx, that want to do, a certain thing, think they can because of where they came from. But then you look at somebody, like me, or, whatever other person, that is quote unquote successful in their career, like it gives people hope.
Yeah.
Because I had a weird and funky, crazy journey. And even if somebody like me that can fake it, all the way up until now, if somebody like me can make it, I really try to have that as an inspiration for other people that they can as well.
Yeah. And I think, I think you faked it less than you lead people to believe, because a guy like you, or a person that can learn, who can teach themselves to code, who can teach themselves to hack, who can teach themselves Photoshop in a couple days, that takes a particular skill set and a particular, DNA.
It's just dedication. Like that's one thing that no matter what I do, I give it 140%.
Yeah.
Because if you're gonna half-ass something, like don't even bother doing it.
Right.
You gotta full-ass everything.
Yeah. Well, nobody wants the half-assers around. It's just like I was just talking with somebody. Nobody wants even if you're the greatest designer in the world, if you're a dick, nobody wants that. Most companies would rather take someone who's a little less proficient and awesome to be around than the opposite.
People skills is a whole different category.
Huge.
So if you can do the work, that's amazing. But if you're a dick to be around, you have ego, and it's a hassle. Nobody wants to work with you.
Yeah, I've worked in corporate settings where there were designers in the room who were pretty much the worst designers I'd ever met, but they were so fucking inspirational and so motivating. That's why they were in the room. It had nothing to do with their design skills. It had to do with their like interpersonal acumen, And so, and I'm sure that you have that as well. And
that's why like networking, especially within like what we do as designers and creatives, and even graffiti writers, whatever it is, having your networking circle tight is always a good thing for you in the future. It might not pan out today, but the person that you met that other day and you're super cool with, that we're friendly with, might help you out tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think that's something that a lot of people it's hard to have the vision that every little chance interaction we have could affect something in a year or 2 years or 10 years down the road. And when you cross people, when you treat someone like a dick, or you have no empathy for what they're going through, they'll remember. People remember that shit, Yep. And I think people have short memories for some stuff, but not when they get kind of rubbed the wrong way. That sticks with people. And so I have always agreed. I've always believed that like within our networks, like it could just be that first time meeting, on the subway, saying hi to somebody that sets the tone for the relationship. So,
100%.
You had mentioned, our fearless leader in Washington. I'm really interested in, like your personal takes, and you brought him up, not me, but your personal take on what's going on, and maybe how you as a designer, as a Latino, or I don't know how you actually identify, but what your take is on this and where you think we're going as a society.
I think it's just a very sad moment, in human culture as a whole, just because any little thing that he says really affects groups and groups and groups of people.
Yeah.
So, I'm not one to get into politics. It's not really my thing. I don't keep up with, what I do. But the things that people tell me and what I see on, whether it's social media or on the news. And it's just sad. It's like a reality TV show, but real.
Yeah. And I think that actually conversations like this, whether you're political or not, I think it's so important, even with the small amount of people that may hear this, just to know that a designer like you, it's on your mind, that it is a sad moment in for all humanity. And, I guess I do wonder, outside of politics, how you cope with these things. I mean, it sounds like maybe you don't read everything every day, and maybe that's a mechanism to protect yourself. What other ways do you process all of the shit that we can't even avoid hearing about what's just playing out in the political world?
Like personally, I try to ignore it as much as I can, but there's some things that you just literally cannot ignore, like the whole comment that happened.
Sure, yeah.
Like, how can you ignore that? That just hits culture in such a bad way.
Yeah.
And it leaves a bad taste in your mouth, and it makes, us as a society, as Americans, it makes us, look so bad to the world that it's just a very sad moment.
And can you imagine, dude, being one of his aides who do exactly what you do? They are there to help craft his brand and to help him keep putting himself in his own shitholes, which is all he does. I just can't even imagine what it's like to be those people that are tasked with trying to keep his brand clean.
That's why so many people are leaving aside.
Yeah,
it's every other week, every other month. It's
almost every day I hear people are leaving. Yeah. Big names and small.
Mm-hmm.
I mean it's pretty overwhelming. I did want to go back to a couple things, because when you went to MTV, you said you started in 2007 and you worked with them for 6 years, so up until 2013, if I can do the math. How did that job, which you clearly took really seriously, how did you then create a balance between your graffiti and now this new stage in your life?
Yeah, so back then, it was a very chill workspace. So I can literally come in more or less whenever I wanted to, leave more or less whenever I wanted to, as long as the work got done. So I would have, the chance to work on a project during the day. If I finished early, I could just literally draw all day. So I had sketches and outlines on my table. And then come Friday, come the weekend, I was ready to paint. So it would be, Deem, where are we at? Where are we painting at? Yo, son, when's the next wall? Yes, what are we doing? And then just literally painting, every single weekend. So back then it was super chill. Like now I have a lot more responsibility with, with what I do, because I'm helping literally multi-billion-dollar brands craft their story. So it's not like I can just be like, hey guys, I got to go, paint. I'll see you guys whenever. I'm always on call. I'm always, ready for the next thing. I'm always on my email because X and Y happened and we have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Or I have a presentation next week that I have to get ready for. So I have to not only prep a deck, but also practice what I'm saying and make sure that the dynamics in the room are right. And,
of course.
Doing, pitch theater and all these, sort of things that, people don't realize take a lot of work.
And all of that you learned on the job.
On the fly. Yeah. Like as I said, fake it till you make it. Can you do video editing? Sure I can. No idea, but I learned.
Right.
Do you know how to do marketing? Of course I don't, but I say I do. And, eventually I learned. And it's one of those things that I tell a lot of younger artists, whether it's graph writers that hit me up on Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is, that they ask me that they've seen that I've worked at MTV or see that I work with big brands right now. Like how can I do that? And at the end of the day, like I tell these people, these kids or whatever, however old they are, that as an artist and especially a graffiti writer, you have so many tools in your arsenal that you have to learn how to pivot and utilize it. At the end of the day, we're writing our names outside of walls. That's literally marketing. That's guerrilla marketing. Yep. We're all marketers. We're all art directors. We're all picking the colors to do or the fill-in versus the outline. Yeah. That's color theory.
Sure.
If you're doing pieces or have a really dope tag, that's typography. Like you have all the tools. It's a matter of repackaging those tools and selling yourself as a designer or an artist or a marketer or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I try to instill with the younger generation of like, you don't have to be the craziest bomber to do this. You don't have to be the craziest designer to do this. You can live in the middle and be successful at both.
And you mentioned like pivoting, and I think actually that's one of the things I've noticed that's a little tricky is being able to identify when to pivot, then also being able to identify like just how to do it and be successful. And I think there's a lot of just luck in that. And then I think also the people supporting you, so people around you or like the team you have advising you, is a pretty big deal too. And it sounded like at MTV you had a lot of support, which is.
But it's one of those things where it's like you mentioned luck, and I think like what's that saying? Like luck is like 80% preparation and 20% chance or something.
Yeah, I think that's
so.
right.
So it's just a matter of like being prepared to doing whatever you love to do, whether it's graffiti or whether it's design, whether it's fucking baking, I don't know.
Sure.
And then getting the opportunity to do something at that moment in time that can really change your career. For me, it was walking into that room and saying, "Of course I can do this." And I was prepared just because I had been doing graphics for such a long time and had so much work online that through that Google search that got me my job.
Yep.
So it's,
Yeah. And talking about like the team that you have support around you, we didn't really talk about like how you got into the Four Burners crew. I mean, you've mentioned Sen. I don't think we mentioned Logic and some of these other guys. Can you talk a little bit about Four Burners crew, how you came about to be associated with those cats?
Yeah. So obviously me and Deem have known each other since, the early 2000s.
Oh, did Deem start Four Burners?
Yeah, so it was originally it was four of us. It was me, Sen, 2, Logic, and Deem. So 4B, Four Burners, four of us. The whole idea was it would just be the four of us as the crew. But then obviously throughout the years, other people have been involved.
Yeah.
So me and Deem, really good friends throughout the years. Then around 2007 or 8, we ended up linking up with Sen.
And Sen seems like the eldest of these guys you've mentioned. Am I right on that?
Sure. I don't want to call him out, but he is the wisest one.
There you go. The wisest.
He's very wise. Very wise.
Yes, he is. Yeah, and he kills it. That dude is a beast.
Dude, I'm his fucking biggest fan. I'm about to go to his studio in a couple of hours.
Nice. I got to finally meet him this in December in Miami, and we almost did a collab together, but stuff went down that I couldn't do it. But shout out to Sen. I'd love to get him on the pod one day.
Of course, I can hook you guys up. And he's definitely like one of the biggest inspirations just because he's another person that, like myself, minority and the way he looks, there's biases, and he's become a huge success, in the art world, let alone, graffiti, but he's transitioned.
Yeah.
He had the opportunity to pivot, as we were saying, into, fine art. And the work that he's doing now, I've seen him evolved over the last 10 years, basically, from what he was doing up until what he's doing now. And it just blows my mind how amazing and creative he's been.
And if I can give that guy a shout, one thing I noticed about him is that he never lost. He's always stayed nice with the cans. In fact, if anything, I feel like his pieces just get better and better and better every year.
The stuff he can do with spray paint, I can't even do with the pencil. Like I've seen him do like the sharpest, smallest lines.
Yeah.
That just blow my mind. And he does it so easily. It comes like second nature to him. Like he was born to be an artist. It's insane.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And so, okay. So I didn't realize that those were the four guys that started. And what year did you guys start? So
I think we officially, Voltron came together type 2008, I want to say, 2009. And that was around the time that Sen had his shop in the Bronx, the bakery. So we literally all just chill there, every weekend. And then we started painting around 2008. And then, I think one day Logic was like, yo, we gotta form a crew. Sen was like, he had stopped pushing crews for a bit. He wasn't really into the whole politics of who you paint with, who I paint with, who you're cool with. So he was a little hesitant at first, but then obviously all four of us were really, really good friends, and it's just we came together and it just became very natural. So we rocked ever since 2008, 2009. We got together, and then throughout the years in 2010, I think, Owens, got down with us too, and Dasic. Then around 2011, ES1 and Rubin got put down. And that's pretty much been like the crew. Then I think a couple of years ago, Epic as well got put down.
Yeah. It's a nice team. Just a lot of skill.
all these guys, I'm just blown away.
Yeah.
I'll go to Wall sometimes, not even paint, just to hang out and just watch the work. And it's just insane. Logic's one of the most active dudes painting nonstop.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And so So we were talking about balancing things, and you left MTV. I guess we said around 2013. And when you left, did you leave for a specific other office, or did you want to strike out on your own a little bit more and have some more freedom, or what was the story with leaving MTV?
So at MTV, it came to a point where I kind of like hit a ceiling. Mm-hmm. I wanted, in my career, obviously, to grow, more responsibility. I wanted to do more things, affect more brands, just think bigger. Mm-hmm. And they couldn't, give me that, because obviously there's a lot of layers in that cake.
Yeah.
So, I got an offer at a different, agency doing, marketing, advertising, and creative work for a lot of brands. Mm. So I was like, this might be, where my career is going to take me. So I, took the offer. I'm still, there now. And I've had the pleasure to work with literally the biggest brands in the world. And it's been, very fruitful. It's awesome.
Yeah. And then translating all of that stuff you've learned into your own brand. Because there's been, what I can see, a real progression in your work. I think a lot of people, there's this iconic look to your hand, and then there's also these characters, these women oftentimes that you've worked with, which, I remember in the 90s, Barry McGee had done some things that alluded to that kind of look. And then, of course, Cause kind of, started doing similar stuff, pulling out, fragrance ads, CK1 ads. I'm just guessing those guys influenced you.
Well, I think, so I think Hansel was, besides obviously me and Faust coming up together, Twist and Amaze were the two biggest, influences when it comes to the hand styles, bar none, besides obviously SP1 here from New York.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. And so when did you first get to see Twist and Amaze? Was it through magazines in the 90s?
I think it was literally being on 12 ounce, and when they released the Vapors.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
There's an iconic photo of Twist down on his knees catching a mop tag, Twister mop tag, and I was like, "Yo, that shit is bananas."
Yeah, man. And if you could have been in San Francisco in the 90s,
I could imagine.
90s, it was so good. And so then what about the women? Because there's just so much of that. You're interlacing characters with these models. What's the story behind all that?
Yeah, so basically, coming from advertising and marketing, obviously, besides the obvious of sex sells, it was more of a commentary on pop culture. A lot of the things that I do, they're very subtle hints on what's happening, in culture. I think the first sticker type of chick thing that I did was in 2013. Before that, I don't really remember seeing many people do girls on stickers like that, Yeah. So when the movie came out, Spring Breakers, obviously with the Disney girls, Selena Gomez and Vanessa, whatever her name is, they were basically depicting, sex in a very weird way, because they're very young girls and they were posing in bikinis, and the movie itself was a very updated version of Kids. And it was really speaking about, culture and sexualizing these girls. So I kind of used that as a, springboard to, talk about it in a very subtle way by just putting my name out there. And just by the nature of people and social media, people started sharing that shit. And from then I felt like, oh shit, I'm onto something. People like this sort of stuff. So then I started doing stuff with the Kanye West and Kim Kardashian, and then I did a couple of memes. And then, eventually I did probably one of my earlier favorite series with, I think it was, Rihanna and these other, it was 4 girls. I did a CMYK series where my tag was in blue and red and yellow and black.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
And the girls had their tops blacked out, and in the original photo shoots, they had their tops on. But I kind of photoshopped it out, did a black mark, and just kind of did a little jab on, pop culture, seeing these women as sexual objects and not as women.
And since you mention it, then the feminist in me is kind of well, yeah. So then, aren't you maybe contributing to the problem by continuing to perpetuate that stereotype.
100%, but it's more of like starting a conversation than me saying, "Hey, these girls are just sexual objects. Let's just put titties out there." But it's more of like really having people, talk about it. If you go through like a lot of the comments and in my feed, people either like it or they hate it, or it just starts a conversation. Half the time, if not most of the time, art is about being provocative and starting conversations and getting people's opinions.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like the genesis of those series.
I wasn't sure like how far we would get, and now since we're so close, like I want to ask you because now I'm seeing these posters that you're putting up, these quotes, which I think they're awesome. I fucking love them, and
I've gotten like a huge amount of positive feedback and through emails and DMs.
I'm sure because
I'm super surprised.
And it makes perfect sense to me. One, you begin with brilliant people. Okay. So you choose a Shakespeare quote or something. And then it is, clearly has some relevance to you with something that's maybe happening today. And then translating it into nice hands, nice tag style. It's just like, and it's clean graphically, it makes sense. It makes sense that it would be popular. What's the impetus to do that? What's driving you to do those?
Yeah, so I think so working in corporate culture, you see a lot of things that you would imagine would be common sense, but aren't really.
Sure.
So I saw a post that I think either Gucci or somebody for Gucci had done a shirt for them that said "Common sense is not so common," and at the time, what I was dealing with at work just kind of like aligned with what that said. And I was like, holy shit, like that really hits close to home. I have to write that somewhere. So I ended up just, catching a tag and doing the whole thing. And I'm like, oh, this will fucking probably be a cool post there. And then I looked up who said that, and then it ended up coming from Voltaire, from a Voltaire quote.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that would be a really interesting poster. And then my girl was like, yo, you should do, positivity posters. And I'm like, I preach a lot of positivity. I try to, help, up and coming artists, whether it's, interns or at colleges and all this sort of thing, and really to inspire them to further their careers. And I always practice what I preach. So I'm like, all these positive quotes are really hitting close to home. Let me just do it in my own way. Yeah. At the same time, I'm always looking to do like a new series of something. And I love obviously hand styles. And this has been a huge exercise for me in doing, letter structure. These are all letter studies for me. Sure. It just happens to be really awesome quotes that are really inspiring. But it's pretty much just homework for me,
Nice. I want to see one on a wall. Will you ever do one?
Eventually. Yeah, that's the hope. I'm really trying to get to either the 50 or the 100 mark before I take this project, outside.
Yeah, it's begging to be big on a wall. I think like it wants it. It wants it. It's really good. And I see. Well, and if I just look at your Instagram, there's been a bit of an evolution because we see the women. And then there were all these, I would just roughly say, Renaissance paintings that you incorporated your hands with, which also, by the way, I think would be killer prints. There's a couple. There's like a Caravaggio one that I really liked. I actually have seen that Caravaggio painting in Italy. And then to see it overlaid with hands was kind of like, oh, that's fresh. I'm actually working on something not dissimilar right now in the studio. But what about those? What was the drive to make those Renaissance pieces?
So obviously going to an art high school, did the whole art history thing, and I've always been a big fan of, Renaissance work and neoclassical. I think one day I was just looking at a timeline of art history, I ended up clicking Renaissance and I saw the Caravaggio nativity scene, which is like the first piece that I did. And organically there was like a big space in the middle that I was like, it'd be dope to have something there. And I'm like, obviously being, graffiti writer, I'm like, shit, we should catch a tag on there.
Nice.
So I caught a tag and I'm like, oh, this could be pretty cool. And I ended up photoshopping a couple little sections to have like hands overlay and bodies overlay. And I'm like, damn, that looks pretty fucking dope. Then I added the stressing on the tag and made it look a little vintage. And I was like, shit, this should be my next series. So that kind of like led me down that path of, neoclassical and Renaissance and also once again, letter studies. A lot of the work that I do is around like perfecting, whether it's a letter or a tag or a placement or color.
Yeah.
So if you see all those pieces are all completely different hand styles, from the sharp to the round to the symmetrical to the mechanical. Like they're all completely different.
Yeah, like that one with the big heart that everything kind of works within. Yeah, those are fresh. And actually, it's interesting that you bring up that point about type, because have you found, and my personal experience, when I was in graduate school, I had just one class where we got to work on type, and it might have been the professor teaching me, might have been something in the air, I don't know. But basically, I was kind of told that my graffiti is not helping my typography and learning how to properly use type. Did you ever find that maybe your graph background slowed down your skill with traditional typography, or has it always been a benefit to you?
I think it's the complete opposite. It's always been a huge benefit, just because when you do graffiti for graffiti writers, which is basically what we all do, we can interpret and read our language. But when you do graffiti for the masses, you have to learn, proper kerning and spacing and, heights and all this sort of stuff. So that's why pretty much I started the exercise of the posters on how to really master that craft of having all my letters, sit on an even baseline.
Yeah, same italics and everything.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's never slowed you down. You think it's always
I think it's the opposite. It's really, it's really helped, because once you can do something by hand, like, whether it's these quotes or your own name, for me, it's easier to translate that once you have a, handwritten, a typed out font. Like you take a Helvetica and you turn it closer, it gives you a certain look versus spacing it out more. Once you stack a paragraph, and use a bold versus an Arial versus an italicized versus a light font, you can see the differences very easily.
Yeah.
What makes it legible versus not.
Yeah. I was wondering about, we had mentioned before, talking about kind of like the team that you have around you. Like I'm wondering, and also I mentioned grad school, where like critique was like a big part of my program, and I loved it. I loved having my classmates break down my work in a crit. Who do you have people? Do you talk to Faust? Do you talk to guys about what you're doing now to get feedback to keep pushing forward?
Not recently. Like me and him haven't really talked in the last year or two, maybe email here and there, but we haven't really hung as we used to.
You guys are both busy, I guess.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But besides that, like really, a lot of people have been giving me positive comments. Besides like the the comments and emails and direct messages that I've gotten. But when it comes to the craftsmanship of it, I've only gotten some feedback with like more like the industry people that work on my end, like the designers and art directors, creative directors. They see it as a really cool way to bring typography to life in a way that they haven't really seen much before, which is interesting.
Sure.
And the way that I'm using color to call out certain things, I think, and the newer work that I'll be publishing moving forward plays a little bit more on that, just because I have, a handful that are online, but I have a huge docket that I have like in my computer sitting to post little by little.
Nice. So I mean, then do you ever think about, or would you want to have more sort of trusted people that can be in like a feedback loop and talk more about where your work is and where it's going?
Oh, 100%. Even though like personally, I don't like to, like change my work pending on people's opinions, because at the end of the day, you're an individual.
Yeah.
As an artist, you have something in mind you want to get out of your head, and it's your work. Once people start influencing it, is it really your work? Is it, collaborative work? Opinions can change the way you change your work without a reason to.
Of course. Totally.
But when it comes to like graffiti, at least when I do walls, my crew, like we all influence each other.
Yeah.
There's been walls that like me and Sen literally like do each other's pieces for each other. I'll do my sketch, half a fill. He do a sketch, half a fill. Then we'll just swap, and he'll like do half an outline, focus my colors. Then I'll do the same shit for him.
That's dope.
Then we'll swap back, and when me and him paint, we have like this crazy dynamic, which I think actually started in Montreal. We did a wall together. I think in maybe 12 or 14 or something, where it was a little bit tight. So the extension of my O kind of like mashed into the extension of his S. And we were like, yo, we should put that shit together like a fucking, like a robot.
Yeah.
So it was like, oh, holy shit, that's crazy. So we did that. And he was like, his mind was blown. Mine was blown. We were fucking mad high too. So, and from then we just like clicked, every wall that we do together, we try to like exchange as much as we can. He has crazy amount of effects that he does with like, shadow paint and the way he blends colors, and he brings paint down to the floor, and he'll take a roller and just roll over a piece for no reason. And like, just, he has crazy creativity. So whenever we paint together, it's always like, I learn so much and love the way he affects my graffiti work. But when it comes to like, personal work outside of graffiti, I try to like hone in on what's in my head. Because for me, as I was saying before, graffiti to me is more social than, personal work.
Yeah. And I like that idea or that notion that like you have to know who you are. You're an individual. And so while I think it is important that we get critique and we have people say, hey, I don't get this or I don't like this. If you don't know who you are, if you don't know why you're making your work, it's pointless. You know what I mean? So having that strong sort of like direction is pretty critical. I wanted to ask this for a second. I don't really know how to jump into it because you've mentioned your relationship with Faust. What was your relationship with Sure?
So around the same time when Sure came out, we all used to, chill together basically. So at the time, GR4's girlfriend was really close friends with Sure. So we would chill in Brooklyn, and then by chance, Sure, came into the circle. We were all super cool, and we all used to just do stickers together. So I was saying, like post high school, we would all sit. Obviously more Faust more than me. Me and Sure were cool for a while, but obviously not as tight as they were. They really went to the next level with the way they turned their tags into more elaborate calligraphy pieces of art. I never went that deep into that world, but we were all pretty good friends.
And what about the influence? Was there a direct influence that Sure had on you?
I think when it came to like whimsical, extensions, a lot of the stuff that I work on my own, I just don't post online, but I do a lot of calligraphy work too. And the way he, did curves and did, his underlines and swooshes are definitely, a huge influence. I think both from him and from Faust, obviously.
Yeah. I think a lot about, just on a daily basis, I think about like my friends that have passed, that were a part of this culture. There's been so many. Last year was a real just punch in the gut. Almost.
Oh, dude, yeah.
It felt like daily we were getting this news, within our culture. And so I wonder if like how like kind of our fallen friends affect your work, if they do, or if you think about those guys regularly when you're making your work. What's the story there?
Personally, for me, when Case passed, that was a huge blow because obviously, I'm not going to say we were super close, but we painted, for a couple of years together.
Yeah, and you mentioned he put you in TFP.
Yeah, which was a huge honor. Yeah. I think it might have been Logic, Demon, and myself might have been. I don't want to say if it's right or wrong, but we were like the last three he might have put down. With the crew, just because we were painting so much together at the time, and he was during like that time that we painted, he was a huge mentor, giving me like little tips on how to, bend the letter a certain way, do a certain color. He would grab a can and just like, paint on my shit. And I'd be like, oh shit, that's fucking dope. Thanks, man. Like it's, imagine having Case too, help you with your piece. That's that's just insane.
It is. It is.
So when he passed, that was a huge, blow to kind of like where I was, going with my artwork. And obviously he's been a huge influence, from me starting and seeing him, in Star Wars to obviously seeing him in books and then having the chance to paint next to him was a huge honor.
Yeah. How actually did you get introduced to Case?
Through Deem. So Deem is literally like the mayor of New York. He knows anybody and everybody, and through him, I've met so many people and have had the chance to paint with so many people. So Deem, I don't know how they knew each other, but they ended up knowing each other. And then one day Deem was like, yo, we're about to do a whole with Case. I'm like, Case who? He's like, dude, Case too. I was like, what? And from that, we ended up hanging out. Case was like the funniest dude ever. If you see like some of the old Forerunner videos that I have online, I did a lot of videos, back then when we first started. I have case like in one or two of them, and you see his personality like really shine through. And he was just a big, funny dude with just so much life that when he passed, I think it was a huge blow, not just to us as his friends, but just to graffiti as a community.
Yeah, to the culture for sure, absolutely. Yeah. And so then that guy's on your mind. He's still with you.
I always do. Like, whenever I paint, I always fucking try to either do something that he would have done to my piece, or I always put him up whenever I can, stuff like that.
Nice. I actually don't know about those videos. Where would we find those Four Burners videos that you're talking about?
Shit. Actually, let me see if they're still online. I think Four Burners. So for a while, I had a lot of our work on fourburners.com.
Okay.
So if that's still alive, it might be there. That's still up. But if you do like a YouTube search for like Four Burners or Gusto or Gusto NYC, their stuff will show up.
And I guess I'm totally sensitive to your time, and we don't have much time left. But what's next? I mean, you mentioned that you have a docket full of stuff. You mentioned work that you do personally, that you have new things coming out. Can you tell us what's cooking right now, or what's on the burner?
Yeah. So I think for me, I'm definitely trying to get this positivity poster series. Somebody called me like the DJ Khaled of graffiti, with just the positivity that he puts out there. I'm like, okay, that's a little weird.
Dying to know who the DJ Khaled of graffiti is. Dude,
I'm like, thanks. Okay. But so I'm trying to like get the series up until like maybe 50 pieces or 100, and then eventually swap to something different that's maybe a little bit more brand friendly. At the end of the day, we're all personal brands. Yeah. So depending on what you put out there, you might get a brand to see your work and, work with them. Even though I do it on the daily, I do it through my company where I work at. So it's not me having the one-on-one connection with the brand, but I would love to, take that relationship to the side and do like my own personal work, for brands. Because at the end of the day, like that's kind of like what we all want eventually, to really make money out of our passion and our artwork.
Sure.
So that's kind of like what I'm thinking, longer term with my career.
Nice. Well, this has been awesome, dude. Great talk. Really great learning everything about you. And and then for people that are just learning about you, where can they find your work? I know you're on Instagram. What's the handle?
At Gusto NYC.
GUSTO NYC. One word, no spaces. Yep. Okay. Yep. And then you said you can Google Four Burners. Do you have a website for your any other things you want to share? So
for the crew, website's fourburners.com. It hasn't been updated in a couple of years, just because we haven't done a lot of walls as a crew in the last couple of years, which we're hoping to change this year. 2018 is all about positivity and all that sort of inspirational nonsense. So we'll see. And besides that, I have my own personal site, gusto.nyc, which once in a while I'll do, like random blog posts of like when I travel or shit that I see that's inspiring. And from there, you can always link to my other social accounts, just in case anybody wants to hit me up, whether it's for questions, in the industry, as an artist, or if you're young and you want to be an intern at a certain company. I have a lot of connects across the gamut. So I'm always open.
What if you're old and you want to be an intern? They can hit you up too.
How old is old?
I don't know. I'm just wondering. It just sounds like you're open to people hitting you up.
There's no ageism, so
that's awesome.
I can definitely help out whatever
That's
age.
Fresh. Also, right now, the link in your bio on your Instagram is where people can go and buy those positivity posters.
Yeah, so I'm turning those into actual prints. Dope. Just for my girlfriend, she's like, you gotta people want those.
They do,
and thankfully they've been selling. I'm super surprised, so that's nice.
Awesome. Well, listen, man. Again, thank you so much for the time. It was really great to learn everything and just to hear more about your process. So, yeah, thanks. It's been an honor.
Awesome, man. It's been an honor for me too.